Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be talking about why you should marry a woman that adores you and what this means and why so many men don't do it. And, just a lot of stuff. Before that, please do subscribe. The most recent one was when you get married when you're young and dumb, and the next one will be whatever one tomorrow's is. So I'll make a game time decision about that. And subscribe. I mean, there's 85 episodes. It's for $5.99 a month. You really cannot get more quality content than that anywhere, or so I hear from my rabid fan base. So what do I mean by a woman that adores you? Like, literally, like, some guys are like, that seems impossible, because that's never happened to me. But, and maybe that's just something that happens to women. Like, a lot of real cynical guys think that. They think that men are just supposed to be the workhorse of the relationship and the woman is the one who gets put on a pedestal. That is not true. If you think about life like that, it's just because, you had a fucked up childhood. I mean, for real. That's the only reason a person thinks they don't deserve to be adored is because they didn't see any adoration in their childhood from parents to one another and really from parents to the child. If nobody delighted in your existence, then you can't imagine what it would be like to be with somebody that does, and or if you didn't see your father get delighted in by your mother, then even if your mother delighted in you, as I discussed in a prior podcast, you think that was because maybe you're like a good boy and you're funny and you're clever and you're smart, but it would have nothing to do with your physicality, which is the most important way that a man is adored, because they have physical touch love languages, right? So it's a referendum on your parents' marriage if you don't think that you deserve to be adored. And they were trying the best they could. Nobody's blaming them for shit. But, you just got to really look at yourself critically, not critically in a bad sense, critically, like critical thinking. So what does it look like for a man to be adored by a woman? And why would many men go for women that don't adore them? Well, I just said, they're not familiar with it. But also, first let me say, I go a little fast sometimes. What does it look like for a man to be adored by a woman? Well, she really delights in him. She gets a kick out of him. She thinks that he's interesting. She thinks that he's smart. She thinks that he's funny. She thinks he's good looking. She wants to be physically close to him. She treats him kind of like a grown-up version of how she would treat a beloved baby. And that's not as weird an analogy as it sounds if you've been following closely along and you know that the attachment relationship between intimate partners in adulthood parallels that between parent and child. The attachment bond between mother and child or father and child is the template for later attachment between romantic partners. So whatever your wife looks like when she's with the baby is about as good as she can be, and so you need a woman that looks at you like that. And if you're dating before a woman has a baby, which nobody listening is, but when you go into your time machine, it would be honestly how she treats her most beloved friend, family member, pet, fucking anything. Whatever the apex is of her love, it needs to be something that you want to be treated like, and that resonates with you, and so if you are dating, if you're on the dating market and a woman treats you pretty much, as good as she treats her friends, but she's kind of cold in general, well then why the hell would you marry that person? She can't adore you in the way that you want to be adored. So for example, adoring to you may look like she cooks your favorite meals and gives you a lot of kisses and cuddles, right? And to another guy, adored may mean that she calls him handsome all the time. And to another guy, adored may mean that she laughs at all of his jokes and says you're really funny. Whatever it is, you can get somebody who feels like this about you. You really can. And the reason that guys don't go for women like that is because they have low self-esteem, a bad template from watching their parents' marriage or lack thereof, and they feel like they could never get a woman who's appealing to them, a sexy, hot, smart, whatever type of woman they like, who actually feels that way about them. So all the women that would adore them, they say, she, maybe, yeah, she's really into me, but you know what? She's really not that great. I'll tell you, plenty of men in later life go back and pine for that woman. You know, the woman that like maybe wasn't the, a brain surgeon, but she was adoring and loving. And many women, by the way, go back and pine for the same exact thing. The guy who didn't maybe have as good of a job, or he wasn't as tall, or he whatever, he wasn't as worldly, but he was like so nice and loving and devoted. And I talk a lot about when women think that a man, when women don't get a man who takes care of them and how that makes them upset, and they wish that a man would take care of them. And I talk about how if you're not vulnerable, I have a podcast out about this, when men don't take care of you. But it's the same thing for a man when women don't adore you, Like more men that I'm with don't even feel loved than women. By I'm with, I mean clients that came out. I don't have multiple partners. But more men in my office bemoan the fact that their wife doesn't seem to really love them than women do. Women tend to think that the man loves them, honestly, and men don't. So more men are getting into relationships with a woman that they think kind of, could really give a shit about them one way or the other than women. And why? I'll tell you why. It's not because there's more of that in the world. It's because more men that are preoccupied attachment search out a psychologist. So it's easy to say. Globally in the world, it's going to be 50-50, of women that don't feel like the relationship is good or men that don't feel the relationship is good. But in my office, the men that are drawn to me, because I talk a lot about sex, are the men who are the ones who are complaining and who are researching stuff about their relationship. So I don't see a cross-section of the population, because not even a cross-section of the population comes to therapy. Any man that will even come to therapy, never mind seek out a therapist, is psychologically minded and is more, invested in the relationship than the average man. So I get men who are more invested in their relationship. I don't even see the men in my office, of course, who just don't even give a shit and will never even go to counseling. But there's plenty of those people out there as well. But if you feel like this is something that would never happen to you, think about how you are acting. If you are the sort of man who thinks that his life is just such that he is a workhorse and has to work, and pay the bills and do all this shit around the house and is never going to get any love back, and that's your working model, that's your schema or your template or whatever word we want to use, then you are probably not acting very lovable. You want to be adored, but you're not acting adorable. And what you need to really reflect on is, are you being a loving man? I just did this whole post about which women get treated like princesses, and I made it very clear that the women who get treated like princesses, by which I just meant get treated very well, lovingly by a man, are those who give love. So if you're not getting adored by the woman that you're with, assuming that she ever used to adore you, if she never used to adore you, then we got different kind of trouble. But if she used to adore you and think that you were the cat's pajamas or whatever that saying is, but now she doesn't, think about, are you acting like a man who is very loving? You got to be loving in order to be lovable. Think about it with your children, the one that come over and wrap their arms around you and say, how is your day, daddy or mommy or whatever you are? Then those are the ones that you feel a deep outpouring of love for. Not like you don't love the ones that just sit on the couch and barely acknowledge your existence, but some love takes effort. And some love just flows effortlessly, and the more loving the person acts, the more lovable you find them. So if you are a man who does not feel adored and delighted in and loved by his wife, think about how loving you're being and try to up your game quite a bit, because it's really hard for a woman to love a man that's acting sulky and recalcitrant and negative. And this is a vicious loop, because if a man acts those ways, then she doesn't act loving, and then he's even more upset and depressed and sulky because she doesn't act loving. So you got to think about it two ways. A, there's some men who unfortunately were drawn to women who just do not really love them much at all, But that's not the majority of people, thankfully. Thankfully, the majority of people, in our country at least, they married for love, and the love can be recaptured. Otherwise, I would be in the wrong profession if I didn't believe that and if I didn't see that with my own eyes. The love can usually be recaptured, but it takes a paradigm shift in which both people realize that in order to be adored, in order to be deeply loved, you have to act loving. So, why don't you act more loving and see? Now, what would this look like? What would this look like? This would look like if you're always thinking that your wife looks at you like she looks at a pile of stinking trash, how do you look at her? You may be looking at her and thinking she looks beautiful, but do you say it? Do you say, sweetheart, you're so beautiful, you were the most beautiful woman in the room when we just went out? I don't know. I don't think maybe you do, because men that do tend to get a nice reaction from the woman, because women are people and people respond to loving behavior by acting loving. So up your game, act more romantic. I have a whole podcast, 10 concrete ways to be more romantic. Act more loving, say kinder things, go out of your way to buy her little gift. If you really bring your A game, maybe you will see that she starts to adore you more. There was this thing that I read about this guy that decided to rub his wife's feet every night, and he just decided to do this. I just had a podcast on massage, so it's relevant. And after like a month or something, and who knows about shit on the internet, right? But after a month or something, this guy said that she turned to him. He had been doing it like every night without being asked, and she turned to him with tears in her eyes, and she said that she started to look forward to this so much, and she really thanks him for it, and it's such a nice thing that he did. Now, that is a woman who felt a deep swelling of love. I don't know where the marriage was at before. I don't even know if this is a real story, but for our purposes, and given my experience as a couples counselor, this seems like something that might help, right? Because think about it. If your wife did something for you every night for 30 nights that you like, gee, I wonder what that could be, wouldn't you feel a deep welling up of love and adoration for her? Well, whatever the hell that thing is that she would love, whether it's being positive, whether it's playing a game with your children, whether it's doing bedtime and bath time, whether it's bringing her flowers, writing her poetry, I don't give a shit what it is, then why don't you try to do it and see if then she treats you reciprocally with more adoration? There are so many people that could just turn their goddamn relationship around, really, and I mean this so seriously. There's so many people that could just turn their relationship around if they gave 100% like they would if they were told that their partner was about to die in a month. They had a month to live. And if the way that they would treat their spouse in that month, if they did that for a month anyway, they could turn their relationship around and not have a dead spouse at the end of it. So think about that when you're thinking, oh, why should I try, blah, 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 blah. I mean, people don't verbalize that, but just, they think, well, that wouldn't work. Well, not with my wife. Well, I've tried acting nice. No, have you really? Have you really tried? Have you really done what they would love so much and then seen how they turn to you with renewed optimism, hope, and love? Because human beings are reciprocal and, real pair bondy sort of creatures. And they love to feel loved, and that is what evokes love in them. So this was your pep talk. Some of my podcasts are more of pep talks. If you want to be adored, if you're a man who wants to be adored, think about whether you are acting adoring. Are you really giving openly of yourself? Are you truly opening your mind to whatever your spouse would think of as loving and doing that thing? If not, then I don't know. Can you really blame her for not acting adoring? And also, by the way, tell her what you think adoring is. Oh, that time when you cooked me a meal, that meal was my favorite meal you ever cooked me. It was so great. Oh, that time where you said that I looked handsome when I came down in my suit. I always keep thinking about that. Oh, it's so great that you think that I'm funny. That really, really is an ego boost hearing you laugh. I never get tired of that. I could still make you laugh. Tell the person what you love about when they act loving, and this will positively reinforce them and show them what they should be doing more of when they have the impetus to act kindly towards you, which they may more than you know that they do. All right. Also, I do want to mention that if you missed my Dad Starting Over live event, you can buy a recording of that. And that's that. I mean, you can message me for that and I will include the link. Please follow me on TikTok. Please follow me on YouTube. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, every place. And I will talk to you all soon. But if you really want an assignment as though you were my client, act for a week as though you would if your spouse was going to have a finite amount of time to live. Why don't you try? Can't hurt anything. I could only help. And I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.